this tutorial we're going to be learning how to crochet the wave stitch. This is a great stitch for crochet blankets and it works really well in any colour palette. So let's jump in. Start by making a slip knot using your preferred method. This is how I like to make my slip knots. Then your starting chain can be any length you like as long as it is a multiple of 12 minus 1 stitch. So we're going to go for any multiple of 12. So for my sample, I'm going to go for 36, but we need to minus 1 to make the stitch count work for this stitch. So I'm actually going to only be doing 35. You can go ahead and do yours to any multiple of 12 minus 1 that you like. So I'll meet you back here once you've made your starting chain. Start row 1 by making a single crochet. That's a US single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So I'm putting my hook in this chain here, skipping the first chain to make a single crochet. Now work 1 single crochet in each chain across until you get to the end of the chain, and I'll meet you there. So I finished working a single crochet in each chain across, and if you count your stitches here, you should have 1 less stitch than the number of chains. So I have 34. It does like to twist up like that. Now let's move on to row 2. For row 2, chain 1, that does not count as a stitch, then turn your work over. Now work a single crochet in each stitch across to the end of the row, and I will meet you there. So there's my first 2 rows of single crochet, and if your crochet does this and twists all up, don't worry, it will lay flat like this sample once we've done a few more rows. We're now at the point where we're going to change colour, but we're not actually going to be cutting this neutral coloured yarn, which is the same yarn colour that I used here, because if I show you the edge of my crochet, hopefully you can see here what I've done is I've carried the yarn up the side of my crochet, so I haven't got to weave this colour in all the time, so it just reduces the number of ends. So I am going to be showing you how to do that now. So I've pulled up the end of my next colour, and to change colours we're actually going to undo this last loop of the stitch. So my hook's going back into the stitch here through the front 2 legs of the stitch there. I'm just going to undo that last loop to change colour. Then I haven't cut this yarn, I've just left it attached to my yarn, and I'm going to yarn over with the new colour and pull a loop through those 2 loops. So I've done that final yarn over and pull through with the new colour to get a neat colour change here. I'm then just going to leave this tail dangling and come back and weave it in later. Start row 3 by chaining 3. 1, 2, 3. This counts as our first double crochet stitch. Turn your piece of crochet over. So because that chain 3 counts as a stitch, we're going to skip this first stitch here, and into the next stitch work a US double crochet. So in that stitch there. Then in the next stitch work a half double crochet. And into the next stitch a single crochet. And you can see here we've used some stitches of a different height, and that is what creates this wave effect, is we've got our taller stitches in the middle and our shorter stitches at either side of this wave. So this is actually only 2 rows here, but you can see because we've got some long stitches at the centre, it kind of pushes those rows of single crochet out to look like waves. So next, chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're going to skip 2 stitches. So skip, skip, and then into the next stitch work a single crochet. Then into the next stitch work a half double crochet. Into the next 2 stitches work a double crochet into each of them. 1, 2. Then into the next 2 stitches work a treble crochet into each of them, so that's the one where we yarn over twice before we do the stitch. Then into each of the next 2 stitches work a double crochet into each of them. 1, 2, and into the next stitch a half double crochet, and into the next stitch a single crochet. So there, what we've done is we've worked this section, so this half of this wave here, that repeat of stitches. So we had a single, a half double, 2 doubles, 2 trebles, 2 doubles, a half and a single. And that's apart from our waves at the edges that get cut in half on some of these rows. That's kind of the same repeat we're going to be repeating for these waves. I will maybe pop the stitch repeat up on the screen so for you to refer to, and maybe down in the description as well, because I think the stitch can get a little bit complicated of remembering that stitch repeat. So yeah, it's probably gonna be too long for the screen. I'll pop it down in the description for you to refer to. Next, chain 2, 1, 2, skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to start that stitch repeat again. So single crochet, half double crochet, 2 doubles, 1, 2, 2 trebles, 1, 2, 2 doubles, 1, 2, a half double, and a single in the next stitch. And then you're going to repeat that all the way along until you get close to the end of the row, just like I am here. But if you've done a longer piece than me, you're going to need to do more repeats of these stitches we've just done. So once you get close to the end of your piece of crochet, you should have just 6 stitches left unworked after a single crochet of the last repeat. So to finish off the row, we're going to do a partial wave. So chain 2, 1, 2, skip 2, and then we're going to do a single crochet, a half double crochet, a double crochet, and then into the last stitch of the row a double crochet. And that's the end of row 3. And row 4 is essentially the same as row 3, so we're going to do 3 chains. That counts as our first double crochet stitch. Turn our work over, we skip that first stitch because our chain counts as the stitch, then into that second stitch there we're going to work a double. Now I find this row a little bit easier to remember the repeat of because we're going to be doing the same stitch we did in row 3 in row 4. So if I look down, this is a half double crochet, so I work a half double crochet into it. My next stitch is a single crochet, so I work a single crochet into it. And when I reach that 2 chains, I'm going to do 2 chains, and I'm going to skip the 2 chains, and then my next stitch is a single, so I'm going to work a single into it. And then I continue working like this all the way across the row, working that same stitch repeat that I will have put in the description for you. So continue doing that, and I'll meet you at the end of this row, and then I'll show you what's different in the next row. So I'm almost at the end of row 4, and I'm just going to show you how to transition back into this colour that we dropped before, this beige colour down here. We dropped it, I didn't cut it from the yarn, so I'm going to show you how we pick that yarn back up. So I've just worked a single, a half and a double crochet. I've got 1 stitch left to work, and it's actually my turning chain from the row below. So into the top of that turning chain I'm going to make a double crochet, but I'm going to stop before my final yarn over and pull through. So yarn over, put your hook into the top of the starting chain, there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 and stop, and we can now snip this yarn colour. Then pick up that yarn we dropped down here, and then yarn over and pull through both loops. So for this bit of yarn, we don't want to pull this really tight because it will bunch up the edge of our crochet, but we also don't want it loose and baggy like this because our stitches will come open over time. Just like with crochet, we need our tension to be just right. So about there. So it's just laying flat neatly next to the stitches. Then the great thing is when we come along and crochet on a border, we can actually crochet over the top of this stretch of yarn here and hide it. But borders are a tutorial for another day. So let's move on to row 5. So row 5 is a row of single crochet, but we have these spike stitches here to separate our waves here. So I'll show you how we do that. Single crochet in the first stitch because our chain doesn't count as a stitch. So I'm going to single crochet into it and then into all the stitches until I reach the next chain 2 space, and that should be after 4 stitches. So as you can see, we're now at our chain 2 space and a chain 2 space just below it. What we're going to do here is we're going to work spike stitches into the 2 skipped stitches from row 2, so these 2 stitches down here, and I'll show you how we do that. So we're going to put our hook into this first skip stitch down here, and I'm going to make sure I'm coming through to the back of the work. I am not doing this with my hook then in front of the chains that we've just done. We're going all the way through to the back of the work, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then keep pulling until it's about the height of the stitch next to it there. You can see this is quite long. This is why it's called a spike stitch. Some people call them elongated stitches. I think spike stitches sound more fun, so that's what I call them. Then yarn over and pull through 2 stitches to finish off our spike single crochet. Then we're going to repeat this in the next skipped stitch. So I'm putting my hook in here, through to the back, yarn over, pull up a loop and keep pulling until it's the same height as the stitch next to it, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. So there's my 2 spike stitches. Next, single crochet in each stitch until you reach the next chain 2 space. I'm single crocheting in all 10 of these stitches here, so there should be 10 single crochets between our chain 2 spaces. So there's my single crochet in each of those 10 stitches, and you can see that your crochet does not want to lie flat here. It's kind of like creating a bit of a bump on that wave. The more rows you add, this does kind of lessen, but it will only really lie truly flat if you give it a good block at the end. So we're now at a chain 2 space. I'm going to do those 2 spike stitches again. So I'm going in there, pulling up a loop and making the spike stitch. And then repeat this all the way across until they your last chain 2 space, and I will meet you here. So I've continued working all the way along and I've just done my last 2 spike stitches and I've got 4 stitches left unworked, so I'm going to single crochet into each of them, and my final single crochet is going to be in the turning chain of the row below. So here is my turning chain. I'm going to put my hook in the top of that chain. I like to go in there to make a single crochet. That's row 5 finished. For row 6, chain 1, turn your work over, and then this row is nice and easy, single crochet in every stitch across to the end of the row. So this is what your crochet should look like at the end of row 6, and you can see we've worked one of these rows of waves. So if I get my sample down to show you what we're doing next, so I'll show you this side. So this is where we've crocheted up to. As you can see, our alternative waves, so our alternative wave sections, I'm going to call them these colour sections, are offset. So that means the start and the ends of the rows are different, but the middle is essentially the same. It's those same 10 stitches making up these wave sections. It's just the edges that are slightly different for this section and this section. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to show you that next. So I'm now going to change colours exactly the same as we did at the end of row 2. So I'm going to take my hook off the loop, put it through the front 2 legs of that last stitch there, and undo that loop. And I'm going to take my next colour, yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And again, I'm not going to cut this beige colour yarn because I'm going to pick it up again later. So now we're ready to start row 7. For row 7, start with 1 chain. That does not count as a stitch. Then turn your work over. For this row, we're going to jump straight into those 10 stitches, that repeat of 10 stitches. So I'm going to work a single crochet, a half double crochet, then 2 double crochets, 1, 2, then 2 treble crochets, 1, 2, 2 doubles, 1, 2, a treble, and a single. And then to continue on that repeat, we're going to do our chain 2 space here. 1, 2, skip 2, skip, skip. Then we're going to do that repeat of 10 stitches again. We're going to repeat that all the way across to the end of the row, and at the end of the row you should finish with that repeat of 10 stitches along here, and your last stitch should be a single crochet. And I'll meet you here. This is what your crochet should look like at the end of row 7, and for row 8 we're going to repeat row 7 again, so I'll meet you there before we work rows 9 and 10, and then you'll know all of the rows of this 8 row repeat. This is what your crochet should look like at the end of row 8. So I'm just going to switch back to my neutral colour. And then for rows 9 and 10, they're very similar to rows 5 and 6 in that we work a single crochet in each stitch across until we get to the chain 2 spaces. Then we do 2 spike stitches all the way across, and then for row 10 we're going to just chain 1, turn and do a single crochet in each stitch across. So I'll just do that, come back to this tutorial and then explain what we do moving forwards. So this is what your crochet should look like at the end of row 10, and to continue working this stitch, repeat rows 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 over and over again until your piece of crochet is the size that you want it to be. This stitch really benefits from being blocked. If you've never blocked crochet before, I'll link my video all about blocking over here, and I'll also link a playlist for some more crochet stitches over here. I'll see you again next week for another video.